Donald Trump isn't even president yet, and he's already smacking world leaders into place. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau immediately flew down to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with the president-elect, just days after Trump threatened to slap a 25% tariff on Canada over drugs and illegal immigration. And you will absolutely love how Trump showed Trudeau who's boss.
We're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor.
Trump having some fun on Truth Social, posting an AI photo of himself on top of a Canadian mountain with the caption, "Oh, Canada." Meanwhile, Trump is also getting results when it comes to America's enemies. He's warning the terrorist organization Hamas that there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East if they don't release hostages in Gaza before Inauguration Day. Okay, Dana, do we know how many hostages are even alive?
No, but we do have some indication that some are, and that means that they need to be released. And I think that it was absolutely right for President Trump to lay down the gauntlet. He actually said something like this before. I can't remember if it was in a debate or at some point in the campaign. He said that if I win, by January 20th, they all better be released.
Yeah.
And they knew that he meant that. I don't know how many are alive. I hope that we can rescue more. And not just that they're released, they should be released, but they should be rescued. What's interesting here, too, is that if you remember before 2016, during that transition, there was a lot that led to an impeachment of outrage about President Trump doing anything that would be seen as outreach. There's only one president at a time. How dare you do that? Well, this time, first of all, Kamala Harris has been seen once since the election concession speech that she gave, and it was in that video. On her schedule every single day, it says meetings. Meetings. She's not out. Then you have President Biden. He casts the pardon and flies to Africa. Again, I'm all for that trip. But then he doesn't say anything. And as you were pointing out, I was like, who is in charge? So in some ways, the Biden administration has just conceded the next 60 days to President Trump. They're not complaining about any of this. And in fact, Trudeau probably would have been timid about coming to see Donald Trump in 2016, but there's none of that now. There's a little bit of self-interest here as well. There is a populist strain happening all over the world and all of Western civilization. It is true in Canada as well. The last thing I would say is, thank goodness they told us that was an AI photo of President Trump, because I kind of believed it was true.
Yeah. Jesse, it's kind of interesting that world leaders, they're like all falling into place. I mean, the president of Mexico calls within 2 hours, I think, or maybe it was Trudeau, and Trudeau flies down to Mar-a-Lago. And interesting, speaking about France, I mean, you've got the president of France, not Trudeau, Macron, inviting Donald Trump and not Joe Biden to the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral on December 8th. Even the world is already treating him like he's president.
Well, Macron invited the real president, Dr. Jill. She'll be there. It's great. I mean, Trump's about to take over Canada and Biden's lost in Africa. I've never seen anything like this before, and no one's really shocked that this is happening. I am so supportive of making Trudeau governor. I've never been more excited by anything in my entire life. And let's just be clear, we're not going to make Canada the 51st state. We'll make it 51 and 52. You make Western Canada, that'll be Republican. Eastern Canada, that'll be Democrat, so you keep the electoral balance there. So many reasons to make this a state. I think, has the third largest oil reserves in the world.
Oh, a lot.
So that makes us an energy behemoth. It's the most well-educated country in the world, because we need a little help in that department. Talk about mining, agriculture, fishing, AI, tech, real estate, Canada, you name it, they got it. We'll never probably lose another Winter Olympics. We'll have all of their skaters and skiers. Wow. I mean, good luck, Sweden. And they share our cultural heritage. They share our language. It's just a no-brainer. Now, I don't know if Canada is going to go along with it, but there's ways to maybe change their opinion.
Do you want to end it there?
I like it there.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The Army's minuscule, but that's fine. We'll pay to protect them as a state. But we're doubling the size of the country, America. Think about it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Add 2 stars,
All right,
you're
Charlie.
fine.
Charlie, talk about the art of the deal. At this level, I mean, the world leaders are all falling into place, and this is a president who doesn't believe in compromise. I mean, he's acting on this America first, basically saying to Trudeau in Canada, you know, your economy can't survive unless you rip us off to $100 billion. Too bad.
Yeah. And the funniest part of it is that Trudeau thought that his best argument against Trump was that, but that will crater our economy.
Yeah.
And Trump is looking at him and he's going, yeah, exactly. That's my point. And then offers I think it was kind of a a peace offering by saying, look, we'll just make you a state and everything will be great. But I mean, we're 10 years in. This guy has been on the public scene as president or candidate for almost 10 years now. And the guy is still doing, this may be the Trumpian thing the guy has ever done.
Yeah.
And it's 10 years in. Who has that kind of staying power and that ability to like blow people's minds 10 years in? And at the heart of it, and people will freak out, I'm sure, although it is interesting. I feel like the freak out is a little bit, like people like get him now. And so there's not quite the freak out that there was, in the early days of his Trump stuff. But at the heart of it, as you pointed out, is something that makes a lot of sense. He's trying to get something done, and he's being a funny guy. He's being a little bit of a bully, and he's getting something done.
Yeah,
that's for America.
He's always been a kind of an entertainer. I mean, he's really he's of that ilk. But isn't it interesting, Richard, that he's a dictator and he's a fascist and he's all these horrible things, and yet he opens his home to Joe and Mika, and Zuckerberg gave, I think it was $400 million to Biden, and he opens his home up to Zuckerberg, and it just goes on and on. What a fascist, huh?
Listen, I didn't call him a fascist. To one point to Jesse, though, hopefully we take a socialized medicine as well.
No.
Oh, no. That's where we ended.
In fact, we can save them from 18,000 weeks of waiting.
Yes, we're going to save them.
Or they're subsidized. Or they're subsidized colleges and universities, why they're smarter. But
Well, they already all come down here for healthcare. Anyway.
But let's get to your point, because listen, there's a part of me that actually agrees with you. I do think that. I think there's a point in this where Democrats have to acknowledge that Trump is going to be the incoming president, right? So the hysteria has to sort of go away, and we got to figure out how do you deal. And there's something that you can learn from some of these foreign leaders who are saying, listen, we're going to try to work with what we have. And I think Trump has given us a lot of material to work with here. There's things that we agree with Trump on. Case in point, he said there's no tax on tips. So I think Democrats, if they were smart in this moment, would write a bill for a no tax on tips. He said that he wants to cap credit cards to 10%. Democrats should write a bill saying, let's cap credit cards to 10%. He says he wants to wind down reckless spending at the Pentagon. Bernie Sanders has been talking about that since he's been in Congress, and that's been longer than I've been alive. So Democrats should write a bill about that and put these bills on the floor on day one and say, Republicans, many of them who disagree with many of these things, pass these bills because your president wants them. So let's go. We want these things. Let's get them done.
It's not a bad point.
Okay.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.